Welcome to Digging Deeper with Backyard Farmer. I'm Kim Todd. Together we will unearth the biggest topics in Nebraska's gardening world. Today we dive into three very invasive and devastating letters, EAB. EAB is confirmed in eastern Nebraska, so we really no longer need to discuss when it will arrive. Now we just need to figure out what to do about it. And of course, it's now in Lincoln, which is part of the reason we're sitting here today.
Right.
So people are still confused about everything from whether they keep a tree, whether do they choose to treat, what exactly do we do? So Jonathan Larson, you have a log in your
I brought my pet
lap.
log today. Yeah, so we can talk a little bit about all those kinds of things. There's lots of different problems out there for the people that are going to be experiencing this. If you have an ash, you need to probably think about kissing it goodbye and thinking about maybe some replacement and doing all those kinds of things. But I can talk a little bit about symptoms if you'd like.
Symptoms, and especially the difference between just my ash doesn't look very good and does it really have this?
Ash is a tough tree. We plant it in a lot of different places. It's one of our good urban trees, but they can be put in spots that are really tough for a tree to succeed in, like lots of concrete, lots of pavement things around there. So we can see them suffer because of that. You can also see ash end up with girdling roots. There can be a host of other problems that they are attacked by. They can also have some native borers in them if they have some dead wood. The native borers are things like the ash lilac borer and the red-headed ash borer. Their damage is very different. It's often just found in the dead parts of the tree or the dying parts of the tree, and it's not really something that's killing that plant. And it's not something that you have to treat for normally. But the emerald ash borer is a little different. So when it gets into the tree, it can cause some extensive damage in that cambium layer, and it can lead to a lot of death, starting in the upper portion of the tree. This is some examples of the exit holes that they create. And these are the things that lots of people ask questions about is, how do I know if it's in my tree? The problem with these exit holes is while they're very symptomatic, these D shapes that you see here kind of highlighted in orange, it's not something that you're going to be able to easily find when the tree is first infested, unless you spend a lot of time in the upper 1/3 of the canopy of your plant, because that's where they really get started. So if you notice that upper 1/3 is kind of dying back, it might be a good idea to get an arborist out there to look around and see if there is something going on in that upper 1/3 that maybe we can treat for, maybe get rid of, maybe do something with that tree. But those are the main symptoms there. If they peel the bark back, you can see some of the galleries. I can pop one of those up here. In front of the log here, we've got some S-shaped feeding galleries on this piece of wood. They make those tight galleries that we see here, not the meandering ones that we associate with some of the other borers. You might also see a lot of woodpeckers feeding on your tree. They like to eat these bugs. That's just one other symptom you might associate with it.
All right, so death in the canopy to begin with.
That's the big
I
one.
heard the word arborist. And
yeah.
So if we suspect this, Julie Van Meter, what happens next, the regulatory?
Well, I'm with the Nebraska Department of Agriculture, and we are the regulatory agency in the state that would be the ones that would come in and help do the official identification. EAB is a regulatory pest, and because of that, the Nebraska Department of Agriculture does need to be involved with any first-in-county find. Mm-hmm. So if you're in a county that's not known to be infested and you think you have EAB, contact the Nebraska Department of Agriculture, and we'll work with you to determine if you have EAB or not. We will actually come out and inspect the tree and try and find any specimen, and then we will work with USDA to get that specimen officially identified if it's a first-in-county find, and then we'll make the announcement. So a first county announcement will come from the Nebraska Department of Agriculture. After that, then groups like Extension of the Forest Service or even arborists can come in and confirm that you have EAB if it's already been found in that county.
All right, so people really should not immediately call their friends on Facebook, and if you're watching us on Facebook, which we hope you are, send us a question or anything you need clarified on, but do not tell your friends you have EAB on Facebook first, right?
You can get a lot of good information on Facebook, and it's a great way to share information, but we need to officially confirm it because it is a regulatory pest. So be watching for that announcement from the Nebraska Department of Agriculture first, and then you can post your pictures.
And we had a little bit of a discussion about, okay, so what is a regulatory pest as opposed to bagworms?
Yes.
We were talking about off air.
So regulatory pests are pests that are regulated, which, okay, I know you're not supposed to use the word in the definition of it, but it means that there is some sort of legal rule or regulation or quarantine that regulates the movement of the pest or articles that might cause the pest to be moved around the state. So with emerald ash borer, there's both a federal and a state quarantine in place to try and prevent its movement from infested to non-infested areas. And we've got a list of regulated articles, meaning things that you can't move from infested to non-infested areas unless they're certified by either USDA or the Nebraska Department of Agriculture, because we really don't want to be spreading this pest around any faster than it's going to move on its own.
Do we really expect, since it was confirmed in Lincoln, how far do we expect it to move west and how fast? Any ideas?
Well, on its own, it's not a good flyer and it will move very, very slowly. But this pest moves because humans move it. So that's why we really encourage people not to move firewood, not to move any of the regulated articles from the known infested area. But firewood's the big one that has really spread this pest around. So if everybody follows the rules, it could be decades before it gets to the west end of the state. But it just takes one person with a truckload of infested ash firewood to take the problem with them down the road.
All right, thanks, Julie. All right, so Dave Olson, Forest Service guy. Let's assume that people have what they think is a really high quality ash. We are getting that question on Backyard Farmer. It is the only beautiful shade tree. Their neighborhood is lined with these. I know Lincoln is actually considering a voucher sort of a system for removal, which you might want to talk about. But what are the treatment options? They've changed probably pretty dramatically since it was first discovered. What should people do, and what are those good treatment options?
Yeah, there are a couple different treatment options that people can take advantage of. Like you said, we do want to make sure that people understand first that the treatments are expensive. They can be very expensive, and they have to be done for the rest of the life of the tree, because EAB is not a problem that's going away. So we really encourage people to take a good look at their ash tree and to see if it's in good shape too, because trees, in order to accept the treatment, have to be in healthy enough shape to actually take up the treatment. That being said, if it's a small tree, usually under about 15 inches in diameter, it can be treated with imidacloprid products and also dinotefrin. That's tends to be a little bit more expensive, and those are available to homeowners. That's done as a soil drench on the base of the tree. For larger trees over that 15-inch diameter mark, we generally recommend that they be injected, and that has to be done by a licensed professional. Now, kind of the gold standard for that is compound emamectin benzoate, and that'll be good for about 2 years in treatment.
Okay, so repeat all three of those, and then talk about
You might have to spell them.
Yeah.
good luck with that. And then amongst yourselves, talk about maybe the pros and cons, especially of the homeowner application. Mm-hmm. So imidacloprid was the first one, right?
Yeah, imidacloprid, it is a neonicotinoid class insecticide. Right. So that's kind of a contentious topic. Yeah.
And touchy why?
Well, we see some issues with pollinator decline associated with the neonicotinoids. And when they are applied to an ash tree, ash is normally wind pollinated, but there are some studies that show that bees will collect pollen from ash early in the season. So there's always some concern about what exactly are they getting when they're collecting that pollen. I haven't seen any hard data to my knowledge, maybe one of you could speak to that, but that says ash pollen has a ton of imidacloprid in it when they pick it up, but it's something that concerns some folks.
All right. Okay, second one was?
Dinotefrin, that is another neonicotinoid class insecticide, and that also can be applied to slightly larger trees as a bark spray, although you don't see that too often. It is a slightly more expensive option as well. So.
And probably both available pretty widely under trade names that people may not, they may go for the trade name rather, or the...
Not to endorse anything, but like ortho tree and shrub, that would be one
Right.
option,
Yeah.
or Bayer tree and shrub,
Right.
those are the kinds of things you'll find.
So since we always also talk on Backyard Farmer about read the label and more is not better. And again, I'm saying this because I have, of course, people that say, well, gosh, I've treated my ash tree already, or I'm going to treat it, or I started treating it when it was first discovered in Omaha or even further away. And so they just keep dumping.
Right.
And what benefit does that have, if any, or none?
Yeah. What benefits is that? Regulatory? What would you say to that?
We do not encourage violating label directions.
Right.
Yeah, it's there on the label for a reason. I mean, the whole thing can be stressful to a tree, right? I mean, you're pumping stuff into it either through the root system or through an injection. So You don't want to do that.
And when you're pouring it on the ground, that's a non-target application. So it's not just your ash tree taking it up, it's anything else in that zone where you've poured it on the ground.
And you have to be really precise in getting it on the ground. Like I know a lot of folks have mulch going up to their
Right.
tree. If you leave that mulch there, that's going to impact
Oh,
the
yeah.
success of your treatment. If the tree is gnarly, it's not going to take it up, right?
Right.
So what should we be looking for when we're talking about a healthy tree to treat? Like what things do you avoid if you want to treat the tree?
Right. So when we're looking at trees, and the Nebraska Forest Service actually has a pamphlet on this, and this is available online as well, kind of just walking homeowners through the general treatment. Basically, you're looking for things that would be like a mower blight, we call it here, where people get a little aggressive with a string trimmer and do a lot of damage around the base of their tree, and just general decay in the tree. If the tree's not looking healthy, if it's not looking like, you know, a fine specimen of ash, it's probably not a good candidate for treatment because it might not even accept those treatments to begin with.
So you're talking about accepting the treatments, and I know over the years it's been a great big hole in the trunk, which doesn't exactly make the tree feel better necessarily. And then are the newer injections a smaller injection, or what are we talking about for size and actually the damage to the tree if it has to be done over and over and over again?
Yeah, that's actually going to depend on a few different things because there are other treatments other than emamectin benzoate that can be injected. There's a imidacloprid injection, and there's a few other ones out there. But it's comes down to the company producing the injector, and some of those are quite large. Some of the newer ones are a little bit smaller, where they're only going into that outer cambial tissue and really kind of targeting that tissue. But they all kind of have drawbacks and, you know, advantages over other things. But each time you do that, you are creating another wound in the tree, and that's something that's going to be done year after year.
Which is why the emamectin is popular, right? Because it's every other year. If
Right.
you look at the new publication, it just came out, the third edition for insecticides. I think it even says every 3 years now.
I think they're finding
Yeah,
that.
so I think that if you're doing it every 3 years, that's a little different than every year stabbing.
It's a little
the
bit
tree.
better,
Yeah,
yeah.
a little bit better. Maybe prolong some of that treatment window that you could have.
So again, just thinking in terms of people that are going to really want to save that high quality ash, should they get the same company 3 years later so that whoever is doing that injection doesn't inject the tree in the same spot? Or does that make any difference at all in terms of getting the control into the tree?
Right. Well, it might not even be easy to tell. If the tree is in good shape, we hope that it would seal off those wounds, right? So it might be hard for the company to tell, but we do always recommend that when people are considering people to do work on their ash trees, that they go with someone who's a certified arborist, either by the Nebraska Arborist Association or ISA, the International Society of Arboriculture.
And where do they find those particular people? Is there a source?
Yeah, both of them have main websites, the NAA and the ISA, and they have little tabs that say find an arborist, and they can do their searches there and everything.
All right, and that would be anywhere in the state?
Yeah, anywhere in the state for Nebraska, and then anywhere in the country, really, for ISA.
All right, so if it's someone driving down the street with a tank and a truck, not necessarily the best choice for
Jimbo's Pump and Spray or something.
or however they've decided to
Right.
name themselves. Exactly. All right, so what, again, excuse me, one of the options besides treating is to go, let's say you have a really wonderful ash, you don't really want to treat. Does it make sense for people to select a good tree and put it somewhere else? How could you go ahead and do that? I mean, assuming it's not an ash, of course, anywhere close, or are there reasons not to do that from the standpoint of pests or management or taking the tree down? Any
Well,
reason not to?
In terms of pests, I could say that you can look around at some of the lists online to see what kind of pesty trees are out there. I would avoid things like lindens and things of that nature that we know Japanese beetle attacks, but other than that, it's kind of fair game. I would argue that there are other agencies that have really good lists out there that maybe can help to provide some input on that.
Yeah, we do have a list on the Nebraska Forest Service website in conjunction with the Nebraska Statewide Arboretum that has kind of suggestions that might be good replacements to consider for ash. But even that list, it does cover some that, like red maple that we think is a little bit overplanted
Sure.
sometimes. And
I like it too because it's kind of, if I remember correctly, it's spread out by like height of tree. Maybe
Yeah,
you could
it
change
is.
up the landscape a little bit.
Yeah, so it gives you kind of different options as opposed to what you had there before, maybe
Are
if
there-
you wanted to change it.
Are there any places where people could go and see some of the trees that are listed there?
Yeah, actually, all the statewide arboretums for Nebraska there have a wide variety of different trees planted. We actually encourage people to do that too, because they all should be labeled, and then if they like the look of the tree, they can see the name and pursue it.
And we will, of course, remind people that we, the campus,
Right.
are an arboretum site and have an awful lot of trees as well. But again, you know, this is the time to plant a tree, and even if you think you're going to take that tree down later, it's probably a pretty good idea.
Can I ask Julie a question?
Ask
I would
Julie a
love to.
question.
Okay, so if you're in a county like mine, I'm in Douglas County. I know we've got it. We've found a few different spots, and somebody's chopping their tree down and they want to get rid of it. What should they do regulatorily speaking with that tree that they're removing?
So if you're not leaving the quarantine area, you aren't required to do anything with that plant material. As long as it stays in the regulated area, you don't have to debark it, heat treat it, fumigate it, anything. You can move it within that area. If you want to move something from the quarantine to the non-quarantine area, then you do need to contact the Nebraska Department of Agriculture to find out the correct way to do it.
Okay.
We have a number of things that are regulated under the quarantine. The emerald ash borer itself, not a surprise, you can't move emerald ash borer. Ash nursery stock is regulated. Ash logs, lumber, any part of the ash tree, all hardwood firewood, all hardwood mulch, and anything else that we determine might be a potential means of spreading it.
And where is the quarantine zone?
The quarantine zone right now encompasses 8 counties: Cass, Dodge, Douglas, Lancaster, Otoe, Sarpy, Saunders, and Washington. It makes a nice little square.
Yeah.
And encompasses a very large percentage of our state population. Within that, EAB has only been found in Dodge, Cass, and Lancaster Dodge, Douglas, Cass, and Lancaster counties. About forgot one of them there. But if you're just keeping it within that area, if you just want to hand it over to your neighbor for their wood burning stove, that's just fine. It's only when you want to leave the quarantine area that you need to contact us about how to get it certified.
So it also sounds to me like this is a really good way to tell people, all right, let us stop doing mulch mountains,
Yeah.
especially if you're anywhere near the county line, just in case. I know a neighbor of ours lost an ash in the tornado that hit Lincoln, and there it was sitting, which is fine, it's in the quarantine area. But the mulch mountains out of what is in the mulch is potentially an issue I would suggest too, or think. Any parting comments from any of you other than, gosh, here it is, and here's what we can do about it?
What do you think? What's the future hold?
I hope we just learn our lesson about diversity.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you name a tree and I can name a pest for it. But if we work on diversity, then we really eliminate the problems of having to come in and clear cut our neighborhoods because we will have other alternatives.
Excellent. Great way to close this. And unfortunately, that is all the time we do have for Digging Deeper with Backyard Farmer. You can watch a new Digging Deeper on Facebook every Sunday night at 6:30 p.m. Central. Do not miss Backyard Farmer live every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Central on NET. Thanks for digging deeper with Backyard Farmer.